think maybe we should start. It's already 8 minutes past the announced time. All right. So again, a very good evening to all of you, and good afternoon or good morning, depending upon where you are. Uh, so today, this is the first time I'm actually live on YouTube in my entire life. So I've never done this thing before. So I hope everything will go great. And so let me introduce myself a little bit. So I am Sourish. I'm a professor at one of the tech universities in India. It's called Dhirubhai Ambani Institute of Information and Communication Technology, in short, DIICT. It's in the western part of India, and I also happen to be the founder and CEO of Rax Labs, and we are developing this this tool, this AI powered literature analysis and comprehension tool, and we are going to talk a lot about that today. But the focus, the primary focus, the primary agenda of today is going to be how you can, how to make sure that your reading list or the literature list or the paper list that you are reading is very top notch, very high quality, and then how to make sure that how to quickly and efficiently prioritize and reprioritize your reading list, so that you know which are the right papers to read while you are reading a particular paper, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen right now at this moment, and so the let me just put it on presentation. Okay, all right. So how to build and prioritize your reading list, right? So just to give you a background, as I said, Rax is essentially a literature survey and analysis tool. And if you haven't yet seen the platform, then go to this website, Raxter.io, and play with it. So see, we are all in some sort of a career goal. Maybe our career goal is in academia, or maybe the career goal is in corporate research. And just like some of my friends over here, we are not sure what we are going to do, but it might be in either direction, right? But if you look at it very carefully, you'll see that we are, no matter what is our career goal, we are constantly, whether we are a student or whether we are a professor or whether we are a corporate researcher, we are constantly in a fight against volume, time, and memory. Isn't that so? So if you just look at science itself, I'm only talking about science and I'm not talking about technology, okay? There are roughly 1.8 million research paper articles published every year. So now you can imagine the tremendous amount of volume and the tremendous amount of velocity or the speed in which scientific papers get published in a year. And it's interesting to see that 90% of that paper just doesn't get cited. And one of the primary reasons of papers not getting cited is essentially that we don't get to read them. And one of the major reasons why we don't get to read them is time, right? I'll give you a very interesting example. So what I did was I tried to look up a particular research topic which is very, very niche, okay, very rare research topic, a topic which is not that popular in terms of how many people are doing research on it. So what I decided was, okay, let me just look into how many people are actually doing research, or how many publications are there on AVAR cemetery. So AVARs are these medieval Central European nomadic steppe Turkic people, okay, and what they were a warrior class, and as you can see in this picture, I don't know whether that's visible, but there's this guy standing over there, dressed up like a naval warrior. And the cemeteries or the tombs used to be like the stone tombs that you can see in this pic, right? So as you can imagine, this kind of topic would be primarily pursued by very specific group of people. But then when I looked it up on Google Scholar, I found that something very interesting happened. More than 300 articles got published just from 2019 till now, even if this topic is so rare. And there are in total, there are 4.5 thousand articles just on this topic. So now you can imagine that when we did some sort of a survey, a comprehensive survey, and including some other kind of behavioral reports that we found that more than 72% of the newly published papers just doesn't make into an average researcher's folder or collection. So out of all those papers that are getting published every year, minimum 72% wouldn't even be coming into your folder. So that's a very eye-opening sort of, very counterintuitive and very eye-opening sort of a stat. And then, it's also true that roughly 64% of the researchers find that they don't end up touching 70% or even more than that of whatever is in their collection. So now you can see that how much of the to-do list that you have is not even touched, and it keeps getting piled up and up and up and up and up, right? So that's kind of like a fight sort of against time, isn't it? So what we are going to do is, so this gives you an idea that, I just looked up Quora and I found out that more than 4.8 million people are essentially following questions which are just on academic research methodology topics. So including specifically on literature analysis and literature survey kind of questions. So if you think that you are the only person, or you are an outlier, or you are a minority, you're totally wrong. You're essentially it's a large scale problem, right? So literature analysis, if you look at it in this particular discussion, what we are going to do is we are going to primarily focus on the topic itself. There are multiple different dimensions which we are going to cover on other meetups, Saturday meetups sort of. So what we are going to do is we are going to talk a little bit about how you can actually build up a very high quality reading list. Then we are going to discuss a little bit about how you can make very quick decision in terms of where to start or where to begin. And then finally, we will talk a little bit about how you can reprioritize as you keep reading more papers, and as the reading list keeps getting piled up, how you can reprioritize things very, very quickly, without missing out on important things, right? So the gist of the story is that, it's so much out there, right? So it's kind of quite overwhelming, and the time is ticking, right? We don't have time. So that's the problem essentially. So, and that leads to this issue that, as researchers, we all go through this tremendous amount of stress level, but at the same time, there's a lot of scope of improvement in our productivity, in our day-to-day productivity, right? So now, coming to the question of reading papers, okay? So why do we read papers? Or rather, let's put it this way, analyze papers, because at the end of the day, I like the term analyze more than the term reading. because of the fact, that, reading is kind of can be at a surface level also. So at the end of the day, when you're reading research papers, you're primarily trying to analyze the paper or critically assess or critically examine a particular paper, right? So one reason can be that you want to stay updated with what other researchers in your community are thinking about a particular research problem. Another reason can be that you want to learn new concepts and techniques, right, as you're reading a paper. Another reason can be that you want to compare your own work, your own contribution, all the time, constantly, with what other people are doing, how other people are trying to attack the problem or tackle the problem or approach the problem, right? And then it can also be that, maybe you are writing a paper or you're writing a thesis, just like what Aki said over here, or you are writing some grant proposal, let's say, or assisting your professor in writing a grant proposal, and you want to do a really, really thorough, rigorous citations, right? So that can be another reason why you would be reading a lot of papers, or it can be all of this, right? So next time we'll be doing a lot of polling in the next Saturday meetup, and it will be quite fun over there. But we are going to see how what other people do in terms of such questions. But I'll tell you something very interesting over here. You see, whenever you are reading a very good paper, is actually the primary reason why you should be reading a very good paper is because it's an immense research opportunity for you. It's a huge research opportunity for you if it is a good paper. And that's why you have to stay absolutely focused when you're reading a good paper. And all the other reasons, the reasons which I just mentioned over here, all these 4 reasons are essentially byproducts. They are important, no doubt, but they're like byproducts, but they cannot be the primary reason. The primary reason of reading a paper is essentially the research opportunity that you would have. So you should never, I see this happening to a lot of research students. You should never do this. You should never say enough paper reading and now let's do research. It's not a sequential process. That's what I want to tell you. It's not that you first read some papers and then you are done with it and then you start doing research. It's not like that. Research, all the different stages of research, at every different stages of research, you will have to read papers, but the nature of the paper reading or the nature of the literature analysis is going to be different, because it's different according to the stage in which you are now. So never do that research starts after paper reading. That's not a good optimal strategy. Okay, so if you now look at these 2 problems, so there are these 2 problems that we are going to discuss today. One is curating your reading list, which is making sure that your reading list is a really top quality one. The other thing is prioritizing. Once you have a top quality reading list, that can be really, really long, and that can keep growing. That should keep growing actually. But then how do you reprioritize it, right? And if you look at it, they're not 2 independent processes, so to say. They're actually quite dependent on each other. So on one hand, you see that you have so much to read, and then on the other hand, there's so much to absorb, right? And they're kind of interlinked, right? So what we are going to do today is we are going to talk a little bit about how you can, what can be interesting strategies in which you can make sure that your reading list is very high quality, right? So so first of all, before we go into the unconventional strategy, let's first dig into Rax. Let's do that, and then we will show you how you can actually, in a very interesting way, make sure that your reading list is very high quality, right? So what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to switch to Rax, and then what I'm going to do, so this is the landing page. In case those people who have not yet found where Rax is, this is the website, Raxter.io, and you just put it on any of your browser and you get to this landing page. And the sign up process is pretty simple, is as simple as signing up on LinkedIn or something. And once you sign up, then you land in your project universe. So it would be empty initially, and you can create your project. These projects would relate to all the different research projects that you are doing. So some of the projects can be quite related to each other. Some of the projects can be quite different. Some of the projects you may have already completed. Some of the projects are ongoing. And you can also do collaboration and all. We will discuss collaborations and all those things in later discussions. But today what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you inside one of my projects, which I'm currently working on, which we are currently working on at Rax, is Research Paper Summarizer. So what we are going to do is we're going to enter the project. And as you can see, you know, a Rax project is structured into the papers that is your reading list, right? So this is the literature, which is the reading list. Then you have the drafts where you will be putting your working notes. You have some suggestions, which Rax all the time gives you suggestions based upon what you're currently doing. You have repository. We'll talk about repository in some future meetups. And you have a place where you can maintain your collaboration, right? So we will today talk only on the literature list, okay? So, so as you can see, so these are all the papers you see. So how many, so many papers that I have already collected. Many of them I've already read and forgotten. So, you know, it's interesting that, you know, the more you read, the more you forget what you have already read before in terms of the inner details. Of course, you don't forget the basic outline, but you do forget the inner details. So that's another aspect, you know, which we are going to, of course, discuss in some other time. And then many of these papers, as you can see, are in my to-do list. Many are ongoing papers that I'm currently reading, right? So this is my to-do list. And the way you would be filling this, initially it will be empty, definitely. So what you can do is you can just upload all the PDFs. You can choose a folder from your computer. And if you have your entire to-do list on your desktop or in your laptop, you can upload it from there. If you're using some sort of a reference manager, you can upload the reference file and you can put it over here. You can also add PDF URLs, or if you are more used to putting your papers on Google Drive, then you can actually import from Google Drive, right? So there is a very short 2-3 minutes tutorials that we have on YouTube. You can see how to do all those things. So now what happens is, imagine that you just start with one paper. Imagine that imagine that I don't have so many papers. I will start with the very first paper. And imagine that the very first paper is this first paper, which is this one, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this paper, okay? And as you can see, so this is a paper which is on semantic embedding, visual semantic embedding. For those people who are into computer vision and deep learning, they would be, you know, they would be familiar with these things. But in general, it doesn't matter really. Let's just assume this is a paper, right? So this is a paper, and this is my first paper. Imagine, like, I don't have any other paper in my project. So this is my starting point, right? Maybe my professor gave this paper to me, or maybe somebody told me that this is a good paper, or I found it on Twitter, or I found it on Google Scholar, and I just added this paper in my project, right? Then what happens is, the moment I do that, Rax automatically gives you more papers that are related to the key research problem of this paper. So Rax scans through the paper. It understands what are the key research goal of the paper, or the goals of the paper. And then based on it, it starts suggesting you over here, as you can see on the right-hand panel, it starts suggesting you with more papers as you're reading this paper, right? But an interesting thing that you can also do, which is very interesting, you can select the title, let's say, and once you select the title, there will be a drop down that will come up, as you can see. So this is a drop down context menu. And then over here, there is something called explore related. And there are multiple different stuffs that you can explore on the basis of this title. So what I can do is, if I have to now look for more papers specifically related to the title of the paper, then I can click on research articles. And now Rax is going to give me those papers, all those papers that are related to the title. If I find these papers to be very important, I will attach these papers. As you can see, I'm attaching the paper. And as I'm attaching the paper, what happens is these papers get attached as an inline attachment, almost like a sticky note on this title of the paper. So which means that later on, when I click on this title, this orange thing, I get all my references, which I found while I read this title. And then what can happen is, if some of these papers I really want to read in details, then what I can do, there is this, over here, as you can see on the corner, you have this three-dot button, menu button, and if you click on it, you will see there is something called add to literature, right? And I add that thing into the literature, and so what happens is it gets added to my literature list. This paper got added to my literature list, right? And then I can also add this paper, let's say, and this will also get added to my literature list. I can add this paper. This got added to my literature list, right? So this is the way in which, very interestingly, uh, I can specifically choose which part of the paper I want to dig deeper into. And then what I can do is I can search out or dig out more papers from Rax that would relate to the part which I just selected, right? So I can also do something like this. Let's say I'm just want to quickly figure out what are the good papers on the basis of this paper that my professor gave me. So what I can do is I can also select the entire abstract, and then again this will come up, and now I'm looking up for those papers which are related to this abstract, right? So I got all the papers which are related to the abstract, and I can start attaching these papers, right? And as you can see, so how quick it is to attach these papers. I would highly suggest that you not only attach it, because attachment helps you to contextualize your references to the place which triggered you to explore those things. So which means that if you just it's so good in the sense that it's so different than bookmarking, because in bookmarking what happens is all gets dumped into one folder, or maybe subfolders, and it's very difficult to, if you come back to this same paper, because a lot of times we have to revisit a paper, right, and reread a paper. And then what happens, if you do the attachments over here like this, like a sticky note, you remember which part of the paper triggered you or provoked you to explore what. So all your other findings, all your other references are attached sort of to specific aspects of the paper which triggered you to, so you have that association with you. What triggered what, and what is related to what, right? So that is established through this thing. The other thing is, I would highly recommend you that if you find some paper to be very, very important and you really need to read it, you not only attach it, you also add to literature, as I showed you. You can also do both. So as you can see, you can also do both. And this is an amazing way in which you can also enrich. So keep on building your literature list. right? So that's an amazing thing that you can do in Rack. So you see, what I did was I only had one paper, but while I am reading that paper, I am digging out so many other papers that are primarily specifically related to that one paper that I'm currently interested in. Isn't it so? Which means now the other papers that I find is so much connected with what I am currently reading. And that is the beauty. Okay. And then I can click on this blue button, and if there is a legal way of finding the PDF, then you can click on this blue link over here, and Rax will also find you. If the PDF is available, Rax is going to find you the PDF, as you can see. So the PDF is available, so Rax can find you the PDF, as you can see over here, right? And I can then copy the link if I want to add it, and then I can add it from URL as well, right? And I can add this from URL. So what Rax does is that Rax automatically extracts all the metadata and parses and scans the entire paper and puts it into your literature list, right? So that's what would happen. Okay. So pardon my internet because it's a little slow. Okay, so okay, so now what we are going to do is so that's one very interesting way in which you can keep building your papers which that are related to the one good paper that you found or that was suggested to you, right? Okay, the second thing is that while you are searching for such papers, let's say this is another, let's say that you are now reading this particular section, and again you can select this particular section, and again you can explore more papers that are related to this particular section. By the way, we call this feature select and explore, right? Then what happens is that what you can do is you can also fine tune it and say that no, I only want papers starting from 2017 to 2020, right? And you can apply it over here. And then what happens is, so you click on the fine tune button and then you can apply it. So now only those papers will be shown to you that are related to that lies around that particular time period. So you can do those sort of fine tunings, right? So that's another thing that you can do, so that depending upon which time period you want to see, you can see that, right? So that's a very interesting way in which you can so another way, and definitely, is the traditional way, right? The traditional way is what I mean. You will do you will search for some keywords, and then you will go to Google Scholar or some discovery engine, other kind of discovery engine, maybe some publisher portal, and then you will type in some keyword and the papers would come, and then you will download the paper, put it on your folder, and then the biggest problem with that is it's not really connected with what you're reading right now. So over here, what happens is, what Rax is able to do is that it actually brings the reading experience and connects that with the exploration experience, right? It connects reading with exploration, or analysis with exploration. And another thing that it can do is it looks into the meaning or the narrative structure. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that I just search for this word called paper, as you can see over. Now, if I just search for paper, paper can mean anything. It can mean newspaper, it can mean any kind of paper, right? But let's see what happens if I do it in Rax. If you do it in Google Scholar, this is just a toy example, I know, but just to show you the power of Rax, So so in Google Scholar, it will throw out anything and everything. In Google, it will throw out anything and everything. But if you select a particular concept, let's say over here, and if you search for papers, research articles, now what is actually shows you is not just anything and everything, but whatever is related to this particular paragraph. So that's the amazing part, as you can see over here. So it's just not showing any damn thing related with people, right? Or let's say models. I select models, right? So what's happening is when I select models, as you can see, it picked up, okay, what is the context? So you are talking about RNN, LSTM, GRU. So they are essentially transformers, which is kind of deep learning architecture. So it could actually understand that model over here is in the context of transformers and in the context of semantic similarity, which is essentially the primary theme of the paper, right? So it just could not, it could have given you any kind of model, but didn't, because it's intelligent enough to understand the context. Okay, so that's another beauty of RAGs. Now let's come to the other thing. Okay, so so now how do you now let's say that you are actually building up this piling of these papers, and all the papers are very related to, and because they are interrelated, so they will be of high quality, they will be highly curated, and so easy to actually bring them into your reading list. Now the next question is, uh, uh, how do you make sure that you quickly decide? A very standard technique is that, what you should do first is you should actually look into the venue or where the paper was published, and this is kind of like an elimination round, and you can look into the impact factor or other kind of factors. So one very good place where you should be definitely going is what we call as the as Schemago, which is the which is uh, so this is the website. So schemagojr.com. So let me just put it on chat for you guys, for those people who don't yet know this. Schemago jr.com. Okay, so then what you can do is imagine that you came up with this. I'll show you with an example. So let's say this was the paper, and let's say this paper was published in oh, this is also an archive paper. Let's say this one. Okay, this also happens to be an archive paper. Let's say this one, I guess. Yeah. Okay, and it got into computer science. No, this is also archive. Oh, okay, so let me see. Yeah, maybe this one, I guess, should work. Yeah, so this is maybe the conference is learning semantics enhanced unsupervised WSD, and if I can uh, select and put it on the website over here, and I can choose both journals and conferences, and I can actually see the maybe I made some mistakes in the spelling, but I'll show you with an example how you can actually choose your subject area. So you can choose computer science if you're from computer science, and you can choose the subcategories. So let's say artificial intelligence, and then you can choose the years, and you can choose whether it is conference or journals, and then you can see what are the top in terms of, there are different things in terms of H index, in terms of SJR, and you can see what are the top conferences in AI in recent times, right? You can change the year from 2016 till now, and then you can see what are the top conferences in recent times, right? So these are the different ways in which actually you can figure out whether a conference or a journal is of high quality or not, right? So that's one thing. The second thing after that, then what you can do, and of course you should be consulting your advisor, by the way, when you do this elimination. The second step is that you look into the title, you look into the abstract, you see whether there's something new about the abstract or not, and probably you might go into the conclusion of the paper and the discussions of the paper, and you might want to know about whether there is something intriguing about the results or the findings of the paper, whether there's something interesting about it which you didn't know. And if that is so, then you, if you follow these 4 steps, so to say, then you are in a pretty good shape to figure out whether you should be investing the time or not. But there is a but over here. So by the way, what we did was we did a survey and we tried to figure out that how people actually decide. I mean, this was quite an extensive survey, and we tried to figure out how people actually decide whether they would read a paper or not. And it turns out to be that only 20% actually reads the title and the abstract. So there are a good number of people who would either want to skim the full paper, or who would want to at least read the conclusive discussions and observations, and or the results of the evaluation, right? And then decide whether they should be investing more time in the paper, right? But then the point is that will abstract and conclusion be enough? So it should not be like this cartoon, this PhD comics cartoon, that you read the abstract, you look at the figures, and this guy then goes back to surfing the web, and then he comes to his professor and he says that, well, I read the paper, and what I'm going to, don't worry, I'm going to add this to my reference list. That should not happen, okay? So so that is something that we should never do. Now, what I did was I tried to figure out that, okay, is this the only use case? That, okay, is it that everybody just looks into the abstract and then decides whether they would want to read a paper? And what I found was something very interesting. So as you can see that there are a good number of people who would actually want to see the originality or the novelty of the methodology before deciding whether they want to read the paper. Some people, a good number of people would want to understand whether the methodology is new. Some people would want to understand whether the results are interesting in terms of whether they are counterintuitive, better than before, or new, or what, something like that. Or some people would want to understand whether the methodology is similar to what you are already thinking or you are designing, right? So and you see that, and of course there is this case of where some people will just want to look into the research goal, which is pretty evident in the abstract. So as you can see, if you look into the other aspects, you will see that you wouldn't be able to understand much only from the abstract or only from the conclusion if you look at the other things. And that's why the conclusion is that you as a researcher, you are wearing different hats in different situations. So depending upon what stage of research you are in, you would want to look your way of your style of deciding or whether you want to read a paper or not is going to change, right? So that's the first thing. And the other aspect which is associated with is reprioritizing, right? So now what I'm going to do is and this kind of like just a digression, but this I just love this cartoon where this you have Cecilia over here. She is a very popular character in PhD comics, and her advisor is telling her that don't worry, Cecilia, people don't read things, just go through them. And then when Cecilia is quite surprised and said, what does that mean, Professor Jones? And then Professor Jones, what he says is that it means that not all of that has to be read, but if you are reading something, you need to read it very well. And then Cecilia asks this question that, well, is that a guideline given by the university? And then the professor is like, well, I don't know really, because I just went through that. I just skimmed through that. I didn't read it fully. So that's kind of interesting, you know. But so what I'm now going to show you is something which is absolutely very, very interesting. And by the way, I got a comment from Yash. Is one of our very close friends. I think what he says is, I think close citation similarity can really help researchers pick a paper for reading. Also, it can be added to literature list filter, which can be useful in drafting in related work section. Yeah, so I will be coming to this point, Yash. Yeah, and this is something which is very interesting and which will be related to what I'm currently going to talk about. So what we did is just last week we released this feature, and it's one of its most unique kind of feature that we did with Rax. And what it does is that it actually covers all the different situations in which you would want to decide a paper in different type styles, so to say, when you're trying to pick a paper, right? So what we are going to do is, again, we are going to now hop into Rax, and I'm going to show you how that happens inside Rax. Okay, so let me just again go into this project, and let me go walk into my reading list. So now, as you can see, so what happens is, whenever you upload a paper inside Rax, what Rax does is something very interesting. It has something called key insights. You know, the moment you upload a paper, the PDF, and if you click on key insights, what it does is it generates these buckets, what we call, which means that it actually generates what is the research goal. It looks into, scans through the entire paper for you, and it tries to figure out all the places where the author talked about the research goal or the research question. What exactly is the research question? What exactly is the author trying to prove or trying to make a point at, right? Or trying to support. And another, so you see, so as you can see, you have research goal, and within approach, again, within approach, you have different sub buckets where you have the possible originality. What Rax does is that it picks from across the entire paper and tries to figure out what are all the places where possibly the author claims that this is something which is new, and it brings that in front of you. Okay, it also looks into the methodology. It looks into, and then comes the research outcome. So within research outcome, it compiles sort of all and collates together all the aspects of the paper that deals with the setup, evaluation setup, and the goal. It compiles together how what were the different data sets or the experimental data that has been used, and how the data has been used across the entire paper. It collates all the observations, as you can see, what were the observations, key observations of the paper, right? And so on. And if it finds, there can be many other kind of buckets in the detailed insights. So if you click on detailed insights, then you can actually see further more buckets. You know, it will give you more. Like as an example, it gives you comparison and adaptation, right? And and so on and so forth. It can also give you evaluation method. It can and it also elaborates on the previous whatever is there in quick create. It will also elaborate that and give you more details, a detailed in look into that. So what happens interestingly is something very interesting. If you are an early stage researcher, you would just look at research goal, right? And if you want to know more about the research goal, you can go into the detailed insights and you can look into more about the research goals, right? This would take you just a few, maybe a couple of minutes to go through, and then you decide whether you want to read this paper or not. If you are a more advanced sort of, let's say that you already know the research goal and you now want to decide whether you want to read this paper on the basis of approach, you can go to the approach. And let's say that you would want to know more about the originality of the paper. That's how you decide whether you want to read the paper or not. So all you need to do is only read the originality section and you are done. Or let's say that you want to know whether the methodology or the approach is new or not. So all you need to do is you need to just read the methodology and you are done. Or many people would just want to go into the research outcome. But then the research outcome, very key important aspects are not covered either in the abstract or the conclusion. So you can actually go and let's say that I don't care about the setup of the goal, but I do care about the data set. Or maybe I would just quickly go to the observations. That's what I want to do. And so I can just quickly go to the observation section and I can only read that. It will take me 2 to 3 minutes and I'm done. So that's the beauty of key insights, which is quite different than what a standard summarizer will be. And you can actually collapse these things like this so that it's easier for you to read. And you can say that, okay, all right, I'm only interested in the research outcome, right? The beauty of this is that, and that's how it is very different than summarizers, is that it actually collates different key aspects of the paper according to the particular dimension of that particular paper, right? It can go to another different paper and it just does it in a few seconds. It just, like, as you can see, possible research opportunity, it found that thing out in this paper. And now you can see possible research opportunity. That's out, that's there. It can be speculations made by the paper. It can be assumptions made by the paper. So there can be multiple different things, or maybe scope of the paper. So it depends upon what it finds in the paper, depends upon the paper. It can pull up a lot of different types of aspects and that's an amazing way in which you can, while going through your reading list, you don't even have to open the paper. You just click on key insights and you can immediately go to that particular aspect of the paper, which will help you to decide depending upon your situation. So that in that way, key insights will help you to figure out what exactly you would want to search. Another thing that I'm coming back to what Yash pointed out to is that when you are reading a paper, what happens in Rax is you go to this info button over here, and if you go to the info button, you already have the references over here, so which is extracted from this paper, right? And you can also add them to your literature list. You can say that, yeah, these are the references which has been cited by this paper. So what I can do is this is the paper that I want to read. So it gets added to my reading list. This is a paper that I can read. It gets added into my reading list. So that's, of course, a traditional standard way of doing it. But a very interesting way of doing it is that imagine that you don't have the time right now, as of now, to read the paper. So for every paper, you have a key insights, as you can see over here. So the key insights is also inside while you are reading the paper. And what you can do is, instead of reading the paper, you can go to specific aspects of the paper, and then you can just select that part. And again, you can click on research articles, as you can see over here, and you will now get those papers that are related to only this aspect, which has been selected, which are the presumptions in the paper. And then what I can do is I can start attaching these papers that are related to this, right? So I can go to specific aspects of the paper, and like as an example, I can look into this also, and I can start adding and attaching both. I can do both. I can attach, I can add to literature, and it gets added to my literature list, right? As you can see, right? So so that's another way, which means that totally depending upon, so you don't have the time, you don't have to go through the paper, you just look into what exactly is this paper about, and then you go to that particular aspect, selected, search it, search for more papers. So that's another very, very quick way without reading the paper, but at the same time reading the paper. So essentially you are not reading the paper, but at the same time you're reading the paper. You're going into the details aspects of the paper, and then you can select things and bring out more papers related to that aspect of the paper which you are interested in, right? So that is one thing. Now I'm going to very, very quickly wrap it up, because we kind of started late, but I'm going to quickly wrap it up so that we can now finish it up quickly. Next lecture. No, I don't want to call it a lecture, actually, to be very honest. It's more like a discussion, and I would definitely want to get more questions from you guys. Now, next Saturday discussion would be this problem, that paper. Now, the problem is that we have to comprehensively read the paper. Key insights is good, but we really need to make sure that the papers don't get piled up. And as you can see, we did this survey, that how many of those papers that you put in your reading list never gets read. And you can see, that very few people, maybe just hardly 11% said that less than 15%, and 9.8% said that less than 5%. So it's just this small number of people, a small percentage of people who actually don't have an issue, but the huge majority, as you can see, have this same problem, that they like a paper, they put the paper in their literature list, in their reading list, and they don't end up reading the paper. And that's a problem, right? So stay tuned for next Saturday, where we are going to actually discuss how to quickly comprehend a paper. So that's the first step towards quickly reading a paper, right? So how to first quickly comprehend a paper. Okay, so now I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to take some questions from all of you. Okay, Aki says, oh, okay, all right. So Aki, we actually done. What people were surveyed? Okay, so basically, the people comprise of all kinds of people: PhD first year students, PhD middle stage students, PhD final year students. Then we have undergrad students, we have master students, we have professors who are faculty supervisors. We have professors who were not faculty supervisors, but who do individual research. We have corporate researchers, and we also have some corporate professionals who are not serious researchers primarily, but they do have to read. They do read research papers. So, and we have, of course, postdocs are also part of the community. So, and it was quite homogeneous. The survey was quite homogeneous across. So, and it's still on. I can share the link probably with you guys so that you can also participate. Any other question? Were there differences between groups? Differences, yes, there were. Like how, as an example, how they would choose a paper or decide how to read a paper. Because for undergrads, because undergrads are not really doing very in-depth research, so they would want to just look into the research problem or the research goal, and that would be good enough for them, mostly. Or so for them, or maybe at the most, what they found out was that they were interested in figuring out whether the method was original or not, or something. Was there something new about the paper? But for PhD students, it totally depends upon their, which stage of the PhD you are. If you are a very early stage PhD student, you would probably be more interested in the research goals and the scope of the research assumptions made by the authors, and so on and so forth. If you're more at a later stage, you would be more interested in the methodology, in the observations, in the experimental setup, in what kind of data sets has been used, and so on, right? So yeah, so there were definitely behavioral differences in the groups themselves, and what I showed you is by taking into account those differences, and how overall in general people were quite distributed, so to say. So there's no skewness when it comes to the style or the method in which they would choose a paper, right? How they prioritize the paper. Any other question? Or any suggestions? Suggestions would also be really nice. Any questions or any suggestions? You can put it on the chat. Okay, Miyako says, interesting. I wonder how you can support first generation students through these stages. Does Rax scaffold these steps? Yeah, we are going to talk about a lot of these things, but I would really suggest you to go to Rax and to go through the product, to try it out yourself, and you will see that how, you get a feel of how it can actually help people at different stages, and how each and every feature is designed in a way such that it can actually cater to the different stages of research, including the first generation students. So there is a scaffolding way. I mean, especially we will be talking about like there is something called critique template. So you can go through that feature. So whenever there is a paper I did not show you, but there is something called critique template, just on the side of the paper, you can see that you can do a lot of teamwork, like creating a virtual remote study group or a journal club. And you can actually do a lot of interesting things by creating remote journal clubs on inside Rax. And if you want to know more, I mean, maybe we can have a one-on-one discussions. People can definitely do that with you, Miyako. If you can give us 15-20 minutes of your time, we can actually hop onto a Google Meetup or Zoom or something. Any other anybody else who would want to put something in? Great. Yeah, find me. So, Ketu, if you can just put our email address so that people who want to reach out to us can definitely, write emails and we can get in touch with each other. All right, so I think it's kind of getting a little late now. I don't think we are going to have any more discussions. Let's make So this is like the first of its kind. I had to get a little bit used to this. Next Saturday session, let's make it really, really interesting, and let's you please, people who have come joined in, they share this message, you know, like we are doing this thing to help researchers out there, and so that we can have more number of people who can join the sessions, and we can have much richer discussions, different dimensions, different perspectives, different types of debates. So okay, all right. So thanks a lot, everyone, for giving me the time. And good night, good evening, according to your time zone. But stay very, very safe and very, very healthy. Yeah, goodbye.